Hey everyone, real quick, if you're interested in booking private lessons with me, you can contact me through my website at breenmusiclessons.com, link in the description and the pinned comment. So the goal is obviously to have the second note be just as loud as the first note, the first picked note. Now, when a lot of people think to do a pull-off, they just go, I'm going to literally let go. I think a lot of this happens because there's a confusion in the term, pull off. So you think, off, I'm just taking my finger off the string. Now when you have a distorted tone on, it can actually trick your ear into thinking that you're doing the technique correctly, because with a lot of distortion and a lot of sustain, you are achieving that goal of having that second note sound almost as loud as the first note, the first picked note. But then what happens if you're in a situation where you have to produce a pull-off without any distortion on? You notice the note gets a lot lighter. You barely even hear it. So something is off about how you're producing that technique of a pull-off. So now let's try to reorient what this technique actually is. The way I like to think about it more than a pull-off is a pull down. So the word pull is accurate. You are pulling that finger, but you're not pulling that finger directly off the string. You actually want to have a downward motion to the floor. And what that's actually doing is creating kind of a plucking sound with your left hand. You could almost think about it as a form of finger picking for your fretting hand. So even with a very clean tone, you might notice now that with a pull down approach, you are actually creating more of a plucked sound, and now that second note is almost as loud or just as loud as the first note, which is again a picked note. So now that we understand that we're trying to accomplish a pull down or a left hand pluck, however you want to think about it, we have a few other challenges that we want to deal with. When I start doing this pull down method on all of the other strings other than the high E string, I'm going to start running into the next adjacent string down. And if I'm not muting properly, I'm going to start to hear background noise. So if you notice right there, I was doing a pull off between the 7th fret and the 5th fret on the D string. And I was trying to arch my fingers the way I would to produce a chord. But the problem with that is if they're too arched, I'm going to pull down that ring finger in this case and hit the open G string, and we're now going to hear the open G string ringing out. Especially if there's distortion on that tone, it's going to create a lot of feedback and a lot of background noise that we do not want to hear. The way to deal with this is to slope back the first finger a little bit so that the bottom of that first finger is blocking or muting the G string. It's almost the way you would produce an octave, the same kind of mentality, where that first finger is blocking the in-between string of an octave. So now the first finger is doing its job. It's actually doing two jobs. It is holding that note before you get there. So when you use your ring finger to produce the pull-off, the first finger has to already be there ahead of time. So that's one job. The other job is that it has to hold and slope back so that it's muting the next string down so that you're not producing any extra noise or any extra feedback. The other way that you can help to mute other strings is your right hand. I want to have my right hand down on the strings, and I want to basically be sitting the palm of my right hand on the strings that I'm not using, and then maybe even my middle finger on the B string, and maybe even my ring finger on the high E string. And the only thing I want to hear is that one string, in this case the D string. And the other reason why this is very important is because if you're starting to do more legato-like techniques, which are multiple pull-offs or multiple hammer-ons consecutively, you're going to really want to make sure that your pull-off technique is clean and that it's actually, like I said, a pull down. That every note that follows is going to be just as loud as the previous note. You don't want to hear any dips in the dynamics or any softness in the delivery of the note, unless that is what you're intentionally trying to do. But you don't want to do that by accident. You want to be in complete control of what you're trying to accomplish here. So it's even more important, especially again on a clean channel when you're doing two pull-offs back to back, which you would have lots of reasons to if you're playing through a 7-note scale like a natural minor scale. If I wasn't introducing that pull down technique, each note would get weaker and weaker. And always remember too, when you're doing multiple pull-offs, you always want the next finger that's going to be on that next note to be down on the string already.